Will Carey. I appreciate you listening this week. I want to apologize for the lack of episodes last week. My work and life schedule kind of got the better of me, and I wasn't able to find time to get some episodes out. But I'm going to, again, continue to try to keep it at 2 a week until that schedule proves either unfeasible or unworkable. But I'm really glad that you're back because this week I have a couple of really good episodes that I'm excited to get out. I'm whispering right now because my girlfriend is asleep in the next room, and I'm trying not to wake her up, as is the challenges of trying to be a creative person in the 21st century. It's a lot of, and I talk about this a lot too, about work-life balance. It's 8:50 in the morning, and I'm recording this while I have the Crystal Palace and Liverpool Premier League soccer game on mute. So I'm trying to get everything done all at once. So on the show today, we have comedian Will Watkins. Will's a guy that I've only recently started talking to a lot more because we are doing Grant Lindahl's The 8 Project together, and for the month of March, if you'd like to see me and Will do comedy, we're going to be at the Creek in the Cave every Saturday at 6 p.m. And you can also check out shows at the local NYC at 6 p.m. on Sundays. There's a great group of comedians, and you can go to the 8 Comedy Show on Facebook to see who's in each group each month. But Will's the guy. Will was actually like a working comic in his home state of Florida who gave up paying gigs to come to New York. And it was really fascinating to hear his perspective on that. Just the sacrifice of I'm making money, which is what we all want to do in the entertainment business, to come to New York to try to become better at the craft, which I find admirable. And we had a really solid, just a couple of comics talking about the craft and art of trying to build a career when you're new to it, and then the compromises that you have to make in order to try to further your career, even if it means hurting your bank account in the short term. So let's go to my conversation with Will Watkins, and we'll touch base afterwards. Thank you. Because to me, like, Slipknot were, to my suburban, like, small town America, to me Slipknot were like the epitome of like dangerous, you know. They were like super edgy, you know.
Yeah
Like them, and like I went through like an ICP phase for a while because I was like, oh, danger.
No,
when I was like 14.
No,
I know. It's just the worst. Like I was just in a phase of like trying to rebel. All right, yeah,
I like
suck it, Creed.
Oh man, I hate to say it. I like one of my first albums I ever bought was a Creed album.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, me too, dude.
Was what was the name of the album? Arms Wide Open.
Human Clay.
Yeah, Human Clay. Because there was also a Christian band called Jars of Clay. And
I remember them.
And I think the first CDs I bought, there was 3 of them, was the Creed CD, and then I bought Matchbox 20 Mad Season, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And then the third one was the Simpsons Music Spectacular, whereas like all the songs they had written and performed like in the
Sure.
series like on one album, and I was like, oh, this is the three greatest albums in my mind.
How old were you when you got those?
Whoa, Jesus. I think that wasn't until I was in like 7th grade.
Mm-hmm.
Cause like I wasn't ever like a big music guy. Cause like first of all, like my parents were like in their 40s when they had me. So like growing up, I only listened to like Motown and stuff.
Okay. No, I was big on Motown also.
Oh, were you? Like they were big into like Motown and also like people like Deanna the Belmonts and like all those classic ones. But then it was like it was also kind of super Christian. Like my mom was super Catholic, raised me super Catholic, and then third is like when I was born, I was kind of deaf when I was born. So like, for like the first few years of my life, I didn't really like. I feel like I don't really appreciate music because of that. Like people have called me tone deaf before because I just like anytime I try to play an instrument, I just don't know how to or I can't even appreciate it. But yeah.
You know enough to know when you hear ICP go, no.
Like it's not even that like I can't even if you played an ICP song, I wouldn't be like, oh, that's ICP. Obviously that's an ICP because I don't know their music, but it's just their attitude they give off and like their personalities and characters that I'm like, no, I just
not what bands are you drawn to? Do you remember other than those 3 albums?
I preferred a lot of like rap growing up.
Okay.
Because I went to a school that's predominantly African American, where you should say I went to a school that's predominantly black, but like white people get offended at that. But if you said that to like somebody at the black school, like if you're like, oh, African American,
they'd be like, you meant you went to the black school.
No, because then it would because I grew up in South Florida, so it's like there's like regular African American, quote unquote regular African Americans, but then there's like Haitians and Jamaicans, and if you called a Jamaican African American, they get offended. They're like, I'm not African American, I'm Jamaican.
You're Jamaican.
I'm not African American, I'm Haitian. Like, respect my culture. It's like, ugh.
Right.
So then, in that circumstance, like saying a person is black is the safest route to go.
It's the safest way to go because that way you're not like breaking up you're not like being ignorant towards national or another kind of cultural identity. Well, so you're from Florida, which I think I've heard you say before. What part of Florida?
I was born in a town called Stewart, which is in Martin County, and that's one county above Palm Beach County. So when I was born there, and then I think it was like a year, 2 years old, like moved down to West Palm, and that's basically West Palm Beach areas where I moved around a lot, but like West Palm areas where I was pretty much raised. Okay.
And you were raised super religious?
Well, my mom was super religious. My mom was like told us we were like, oh, if anybody asks, you're Irish Catholic, and she like raised us like Irish Catholic is like regular Catholic, except like you add on like superstitions and you add it's basically like the European equivalent of like Santeria or like you know like Creole like voodoo, where it's like we believe in the
so it's sort of like swampy mystical bayou kind of stuff.
But it had a lot to do with
praying with snakes.
No, my mom was more like anything like don't walk under a ladder, don't open an umbrella, don't
literal superstitions.
Yeah, like don't step on cracks, don't like all those like old timey like 1920s like, oh, if you do this then this is gonna happen. Right. I was like, yeah, and I think that's probably why I stopped being religious, because at one point I think it was like 9th grade or something like that, and I was with like kids in my Sunday school, and I opened up this kid opened up an umbrella inside the gym, and I was like, hey man, don't do that, that's bad luck. And he was like, no, it's not, it's just an umbrella. And then once he said that, I was like, yeah, it is just an umbrella, but what if there's no Jesus? And then it just started like unraveling, like, what if everything everybody's told me is bullshit? The umbrella inside was your catalyst. Yeah. Would you? So do you like identify as atheist now? It's weird because like I would say I'm more like agnostic, where it's just like you know, there could be a God, but right now I don't see that there's any proof to it. I don't want to subscribe to anything. But if like tomorrow, if they were like, hey, here's proof there's a divine existence, I'd be like, cool, all right. Okay, yeah, that's kind of how I've settled into lately also. Because I think when I was like a teenager, my atheism was always sort of rooted in a fuck you kind of attitude.
And I know that's not the same for everybody. But that's just kind of what mine was. And then eventually I kind of sat down.
You were an ICP, so you know.
For a short period of time. I really don't want that to be the defining part of my life.
Oh, you know, Will Carey is the ICP comic.
No, I've had the ICP comic on.
Oh, Joseph Robert?
Yes, I have. I've had him on. We had like serious discussion, but like, no, this is why this song is. Ooh. Yeah, like, because who else? There's like no one. Because I had this bit for a while. I haven't done it lately. Where I say when I was 14, I was really into the Insane Clown Posse, which is the only thing you can't move to New York to be accepted for. Because there's the ultimate stigma associated with that. I think you know.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The same way I imagine like growing up in Florida has a very set stigma to it too.
It's not really one, because like South Florida is really like a melting pot of so many different cultures and stuff like that, but it's usually like you keep to your own type thing,
right?
Where it's like you know, like Mike Mercadal, he's like from Miami, and he was raised like super Cuban and stuff, but like where I grew up, it was like it was predominantly like African American or white. And the only like real Hispanics like in like West Palm Beach area were like Guatemalans or Mexicans, like migrant workers type things. And all the Cuban people were like down in Miami. So there was like a divide where like to the point where I hadn't had like actual rice until I was like in high school, because it was all just like potatoes. Like my mom was like potatoes and parsnips and stuff. Like that's what like, and then I only thought
you were living the true Irish immigrant experience in sunny West Palm.
Like the only thing that like the only food my mom made was like classic 1950s like Americana, like, well, here's the pork roast and you know stuff like that. It wasn't like my mom was ever like, oh, we're gonna try, you know, stir fry today.
Okay, so it wasn't like would you say you were sheltered at least?
My mom was definitely like she hovered a little bit, I would say that. Like when I was growing up, you were raised Catholic, right?
I was raised Episcopalian.
My dad's Episcopal.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, my dad.
So I have it in my head that Episcopalian and Catholic is kind of similar. It's just Episcopalian's maybe like a little less guilt intensive.
Yeah. Was it like Robin Williams was like...
Yeah, he had that...
Episcopal's Catholic light?
Yeah, he's like, same religion, half the guilt.
Yeah. Plus it's the whole papal authority and everything like that.
Right.
Which is because like my dad's grandfather or great-grandfather was the one who founded the first Episcopal church in America.
Really?
So, like, it's so weird to see, like, how... And my dad wasn't religious at all, basically. But my mom was, like,
he was
super
just
religious.
Culturally.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, yeah, so, like, growing up, my mom was, like... She was very hovery, where she was, like, you know... And she wasn't making sure the Catholic part stayed, was, you know... If you do anything more than peck on the lips... That's a sin against, that's premarital sex type thing.
Okay.
And she was like, you know, when you date a person, if you go on a date with somebody, you're dating them to marry them. Like every date is an audition to get married.
Okay.
So like whenever I was dating, the first date, I was like, could I see myself having kids with this person?
Wow.
And it's like, oh, we're just going to the movies to see, you know, fucking whatever Will Ferrell movie or whatever.
Okay.
Bulletproof Monk. I'm like, well, could I marry
And this is when you're in high school, you're thinking that?
Yeah, like I was actually for a while I was gonna be like my mom kind of wanted me to be a priest, so I was like in my head I was like, oh, I'll be a priest. Yeah, like I think it had to do with my mom just didn't want me fucking. I guess I don't know. But
she just couldn't handle the idea.
Yeah.
So she's like, oh, I'll save him if I just. How close to a priest did you get?
Pretty good. Like I did everything but go into the seminary, where it was like, you know, the little classic. Altar boy, lector, Eucharistic minister. Like I did every lay job you could have in the church, and then like I got put on like the youth council of Palm Beach, and then from there I got put on the bishop's council, which was like the bishop had like all these people around him. I was like the representative for the youth, and it was like, oh, well, you know, if you go this track, you can become a priest, and blah blah blah, you can become a bishop. As they were setting out like a career path, I was like, this is what I have to do. But then it was literally like. One bishop, I forgot Daly, I think his name was one of the people who got busted for having sex with kids.
Oh, really?
And then the one after him, which was the one I was studying under, was Anthony J. O'Connell, which is weird because there's a comic named Anthony O'Connell up here.
Oh, but, really?
It was Anthony J. O'Connell was the bishop, and he also got busted for feeling up kids.
Oh man.
And so it was like 2 bishops in a row on top of the umbrella. I was like, I don't know if this Catholic thing is working out for me. I don't know if I can.
Yeah. So in addition to the umbrella, the pedophilia is like, I don't think this is the organization I want to be a part of.
Yeah, and it was also like I was working like in the church. I would answer phones like in the rectory.
Yeah. And who calls the church?
Crazy people a lot. There's a lot of crazy people, homeless people, people with AIDS, and I mean, there was a good side to like religion. That was one thing I saw was like, oh yeah, religion does help people. That's why I'm not like anti-religion.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way now, because eventually I started realizing, oh, it's mostly all of my religious or people who culturally identify as being religious.
Yeah.
When I'm my first couple years in New York and I can't afford to eat or go on the subway, they're the ones that are giving me lending me money or
like if
cooking me dinner.
If being religious is an excuse for you to be nice, like. Be religious.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I almost feel I've recently come to the opinion that maybe not even religion specifically, but faith is kind of like, water. Like you need faith in something to kind of get through the day. Otherwise, you're just a nihilist.
Yeah, I mean,
but then you can drown. Also,
you can drown.
You can drown, and you can drown a bunch of people with you.
Yeah, drown them in holy water. There's like I've thought this before, where it's like if somebody's about to shoot somebody else, and there's a religious person, and they jump in front of that bullet and take that bullet, in their head they're thinking, I'm going to save this person, and in doing that act, I'm going to heaven. I'm going to get rewarded for my good deed. But if an atheist is like, oh, I'm going to jump in front of that bullet, they're doing it to save that person with no reward.
Right.
So it's like, which is the more
admirable?
Yeah, exactly. It's like the person who's expecting reward or the person who's just doing it to save somebody else's life.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine like maybe hopefully in that situation you're just thinking so quickly that you don't have a chance to rationalize it. You just sort of go, I got to help that person.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why I think like the Pope Francis was like, atheists can go to heaven. And I think it may be because of that logic of, well, these people, if you're an atheist and you're a good person helping other people, then why shouldn't you? Why shouldn't, Gandhi or whoever non-Christian person not go to heaven or whatever? You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Religion.
Yeah.
But then it's also like, they did use the Crusades as an excuse to murder and plunder.
Yeah, there's a lot of rationalization when it comes to your faith.
And then you had like the last pope was a former Nazi who covered up pedophilia, and it's like, jeez.
Yeah,
well, making it really hard, guys. I really want to give you guys the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, but you're just giving me all the doubt.
Yeah. But yeah, it was like all that stuff like kind of made me unreligious. And I think one of the
And this is when you're like in your mid-teens?
Yeah, this is probably in my teens. Like that definitely growing where you're like discovering what kind of a man you're going to be. And I think probably the one that clinched it was like I had a lot of bad stuff happen to me between like 17 and 19. And so I think it was around like 18, 19. I went to this priest. And I was like going to confession, and like when you go to confession, it's basically like you're talking to a therapist. It's Catholic therapy, basically. And so I was like, all these bad things are happening to me, and
what was going on?
It was just like aside from like parents separating, parents divorced, and then I ended up moving to Chicago to try to do like Second City and stuff. Okay. And then there was like literally a comedy of errors happened, where like there was a car accident, there was a couple of car accidents, there was. I lost a lot of money because I had to help people out, and they screwed me over, and all this stuff started happening. And then, and so I was telling all this to the priest, and I spent like good 15 minutes talking to this priest, 20 minutes talking, and he goes, "Well, what sins did you commit for all this to happen to you?" And I was like, I've been an altar boy my whole life, a lector, Eucharistic minister. I was studying to become a priest. Like I've helped people. Right. I used to go to food kitchens. Like I've never had sex by that time. I was like, what have I done? What don't I get? Like what?
Not even a gosh. I'm so sorry for you.
Yeah, it was just like, well, what sins did you commit? And I was like, I've literally committed none of the sins I wanted to commit. There were sins I wanted to commit that would have deserved all these things. Right. Which is why somebody's like, oh, that's karma. I'm like, oh, fuck your karma.
Oh, that's got to be a real mind. That's got to be a real mindfuck too.
Yeah.
To be living your... It's like that episode of The Simpsons where Ned Flanders' house gets destroyed in the hurricane.
I forgot about that one. That's a good one.
And he's just saying, I even kept kosher. I did everything the Bible said, even the stuff that contradicts the other stuff. One of my favorite lines in the show.
Oh my God, I'm Ned Flanders.
Yeah. So, well, you have that sort of affable charm about you, Will. Which I kind of identify with. That's sort of like, oh man, just a couple affable dudes trying to get through. Okay, so you're in your mid-teens, life's falling apart, and your faith is crumbling.
Yeah.
But you like comedy.
Yeah, well, like I didn't really understand what comedy was. I was talking to somebody about this the other day, but like I didn't really know what stand-up comedy was until I was probably 17, 18 years old. Because before that, like the only idea of what stand-up comedy was like my exposure to it was like Bill Cosby records.
Me too.
But that's only because Bill Cosby was clean and my mom refused to let us watch Andrew Dice Clay. Like he was the devil. And so I only knew Bill Cosby from The Cosby Show. So when I heard him do stand-up, I was like, oh, this is just like a radio play that he's doing of The Cosby Show. Because he's basically saying the same material. And the same thing, like Jeff Foxworthy had a TV show. And then after I saw the TV show... I remember
that TV show.
Yeah, it was good. It was actually a pretty good show. Haley Joel Osment was his son.
Yeah, it was a pretty solid multi-camera sitcom.
And when I heard Jeff Foxworthy's stuff... Like I was like, oh, that's literally some of the jokes that are in the show are in his specials. So I was like, oh, he's just doing an act out, a one-man show of his TV show.
Yeah.
So I don't think it was till I started watching like Premium Blend and stuff that I was like, stand-up comedy, huh?
Right.
And it was like
that was like
comedians.
The first time you learn. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean because like guys like Cosby and Foxworthy, they're almost playing out like scenes.
Yeah.
Like Cosby, I saw twice, and this is before. We learned what a terrible human he is. It's always weird now because I've talked to a couple. I've talked to a few people, and a lot of us all have Cosby as a comedic influence.
Oh man!
And there's that sort of like, how do you rationalize that? Granted, it's the smallest problem of the related to Cosby, but they're almost sort of like acting out scenes, like they're characters.
Oh yeah, Bill Cosby is straight up a monologuist. Like he's, you know what's funny too is like I'm cool with not liking Cosby anymore because like a few years ago I listened to my favorite Cosby record, which was Bill Cosby is a Very Funny Fellow.
Right.
And it was that's actually the end of it, and it has like Noah and all these other ones, and I listened to it again and I was like, ew, this is hard to listen to. Like it doesn't really hold up. Like,
right.
Compared to everything, once you've heard CK and Bill Burr and Chris Rock and all these modern day comedians, it's like, that's not that good.
Yeah, it doesn't have the same punch as it used to. I feel the same way about Bill Cosby himself because I watched that. I watched that a lot.
Yeah.
And then there's a certain, I think, there's almost like talking specifically about the material. There's like a certain amount of it's like very easily accessible. It's almost like if I was going to compare it to like food or something, it's like macaroni and cheese, it's pretty basic and meant to be enjoyed by a lot of people.
Yeah.
But then as like I think, and I've said this a few times, as life humbles you and you get a few more scars on you physically and mentally, you start to maybe appreciate guys like Louis C.K. or Chris Rock, and you want that.
Yeah, exactly. You want that? You want the sriracha on top of your macaroni and cheese,
right? Exactly.
Yeah, you want some jalapeno popper mixed in with there, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, you need some heat.
Yeah, and it's the same thing as like Chris Rock has a joke where he says like if you're in a relationship and you do something sexual with that man, you can't ever go back. It's like, oh, you wore heels to bed? You have to wear heels to bed every time now.
Yeah,
it's the same thing.
That's a great bit. Yeah, and then he says in that same bit that women can't go down in lifestyle.
Yeah.
You date a guy with a car, you have to have a car now.
Such a good bit.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's an incredible bit.
That was Kill the Messenger, right? That was that special.
Yes, I think that was his last special, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He hasn't done one for a while.
I saw him actually getting ready for that special at the West Palm Beach Improv.
Awesome.
And it was like he was there Thursday through Sunday, and I went there Thursday, and I ended up working like as the assistant to the owner of the Palm Beach Improv.
Mm-hmm.
But this is before that, so it was like Thursday. I bought tickets to go see him, and he's literally on stage with like a yellow memo pad, and he's like reading jokes off. He's treating like a paid, like we all paid $30 per ticket, and he's treating it like it's an open mic where he's just like reading notes off the pad. And then
can I ask you this? Was he did he have his like big stage persona, or was he kind of being more monotone? Because I've heard that he's very low key when he's working stuff out.
It's funny. I went there the Thursday show and saw him do stand up, and he was very low key. But then Sunday, the owner of the club came over and saw me and was like, "Why don't you come back Sunday too?" And so I was like, "Fuck yeah, I'll come back Sunday." So when I came back Sunday, he was Chris Rock pounding the stage, looking like a preacher, giving a sermon, and it was like, and you could see all the jokes he worked on have been improved, they're all polished now. He changed a few things around. Like there's one joke he has where he says, is along the same lines where he said like rich people can't make fun of poor people in the same way that like skinny people can't make fun of fat people. So he says, rich people can't be like, man, look at that poor motherfucker driving a Nissan Sonata. But like I think he said Nissan Sonata on Sunday, but on Thursday he said Hyundai Elantra. So he decided to change the car, and I was like, that's so interesting that he like just that little tiny change affected a bigger laugh.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was very interesting to me.
Yeah, and were you doing comedy around the time you saw him?
Yeah, I was like straight up open micer at that time. Yeah, like
and when did you start doing open mics?
I did. It was right after I mentioned I went to Chicago for a bit, and
yeah, I was going to ask you, where does that play? So you're in Florida.
Yeah,
you're being blamed for your problems because of your sins, and then how does
so originally
Chicago
I wanted
happen?
to be like a Shakespearean actor was like my big dream, like not even like movie actor. I wanted like I would read like Shakespeare anthologies like they were like Twilight books.
Okay.
And so I was like, I wanted to go to Juilliard, and I started researching Juilliard, and I was like, I'm gonna go to Juilliard. And then I found out how much it costs, and I was like, I'll go to Circle in the Square maybe instead, 'cause that's cheaper. And then I was like, then I found out like AADA, AMDA, and like a couple of the places up here. And then I auditioned for AADA, the American Academy of Dramatic. You know that place?
I don't think I do.
It's on, I think it's on like 29th and like Madison Avenue. But it's been there, like Danny DeVito went there.
Oh, okay, yeah. I think I know what you're
big guys
talking
went
about.
there. And so I went to audition for it. And this is one of the things that like was the bad thing. One of the bad things that happened was like I went to audition for it, and they were like, "Great, we loved your stuff. Just gotta send your transcripts and everything like that." And I had letters of recommendation. Everything was in order. So I went to my high school. I was like, "Oh, you just gotta send transcripts to here." And then I got a letter in the mail like a month later, like, "Hey, we haven't received your transcripts yet. Please send your transcripts." And so I went to the guidance counselor again. I was like, "Hey, they didn't receive the transcripts," and they're like, "Oh, we'll send them today." And then like another month later, they were like, "We haven't received your transcripts, so unfortunately we're gonna pass." And I was like, "What?" And so I was like so mad at like that's why I hate high schools. I hate schools.
So they just didn't ever send them?
Yeah, they didn't, because I don't think it wasn't an actual college. So I think they didn't like give it like real credibility of like, oh, we're gonna. So
I would be mad at that school forever.
Oh, I fucking hate my high school. Oh.
Yeah.
So once that happened, I was like, you know what? I like Saturday Night Live at the time. I was like, maybe
Saturday Night Live is big for a lot of people.
That was one of my big comedic influences. And I had taken a stand-up comedy class when I was a senior in high school.
What year is this? I'm trying to place what cast of SNL.
I graduated in 2004.
2004. Okay.
Yeah.
So who's on SNL at that time?
2004. I think it was like Will Ferrell was on it. Was on it.
Will Ferrell, Jimmy Fallon, Sherry O'Terry.
Yeah. Classic. And it was also writing off of like Phil Hartman had just been on, and it was one of the greatest. And like I had all the like best of DVDs, best of Phil Hartman, best of Chris Kattan, best of Christopher Walken even.
Yeah, I had those too.
But I had done stand-up comedy as stand-up comedy class, and I fucking loved it.
So you first did it at the class. Was it offered at like a comedy club?
Yeah, it was at the Palm Beach Improv.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
awesome.
so I did it there, and then...
do you remember who your teacher was?
Yeah, I do. You know what's funny is I actually ended up teaching that class.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I'll tell you that in a bit. But it was this guy, and it was Drew Satsy, who is such a nice dude. And he did a lot of corporate shows and stuff like that. And
big money in corporate chess.
Yeah. He played at like yacht clubs and stuff, especially since it was like around the Palm Beach area. But he's I gotta say he's a nice guy, but he's one of the reasons why I hated stand-up comedy classes for the longest time. Because in the class, like we had to pitch ideas. So I pitched this idea for a bit, and he was like, "No, don't do that. You're like 18 years old. Just do bits about high school. Talk about your high school experience, and why don't you do a?" This is literally he gave me a bit to do. He goes, "Do a bit about how come there are no number 3 pencils." And I was like, "No, that sounds terrible." So I pitched this one bit about, I don't know, a shitty car I had or whatever it was. And then he was like, "Don't do that joke." And then the next class that came, I was like, "I really want to do this joke." And he's like, "Don't do that joke. Do the number 3 pencil joke." And every class that came back, I was like, "I want to do this joke." And he's like, "Do the number 3 pencil joke." And then finally the night of the class goes, and I'm like, "Fuck the number 3 pencil. I'm going to do the joke I want to do." So I ended up doing all the jokes I wanted to do that he said were bad. And I was like the best one of the night. And
what joke was it?
It was... I think the joke he didn't want me to do was about me donating blood, where it's like, where it was like I went and they like asked all these questions like, have you ever done drugs? Have you ever, had sex with a man? And I was like, no. And they're like, do you want to have sex with a man and do drugs? And which ended up, it's so weird. I did that joke for about a year, and then the movie Bad Boys 2 came out, and there's a very similar like part in the movie where Will Smith is asking like a kid who's trying to date his daughter or something like that, and he's like, "Have you ever done drugs or had sex with another man?" And he's like, "No." And he goes, "Do you want to?" And I was like, did Bad Boys 2 steal my first joke? And that filmed in Miami, so it's like I might have done a show in Miami. I wondered, did Will Smith see me do that joke? It's just the easy joke probably, but
sure.
Yeah, so I did the comedy class, and then that's when they didn't send the transcripts and stuff. So then I was like, fuck, I'm just gonna go to Chicago. I'll study at Second City, and then I'll be on Saturday Night Live. Like I'll go that track.
Definitely.
Because like at the time, like UCB wasn't a thing. Like there were no UCB classes really, or at least then
Second City was like the thing for improv, or maybe for Chicago, but right?
Yeah, it was like UCB, IO, and then like LA had like the Groundlings.
The Groundlings. Yeah.
And so I got it all ready. I was gonna move to Chicago. I like emailed back and forth with this dude in Chicago who's like, "Yeah, you can rent my room for $400 a month, whatever." So I was like trying to set up jobs and stuff. And then like when my parents separated, they didn't get divorced. So
were they separated for a long time?
Yeah, they were separated for basically like all of my high school, like basically from like 8th grade up.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
So then when I turned 18, that's when my dad like put in the divorce papers, because if it was before that, like he would have had to pay child support and stuff. So it was like when I was 18, it was like, all right, we're getting divorced. And then my mom, like, I think her like empty nest syndrome like kicked in prematurely. So it was like, well, if you're moving to Chicago, I'm going to move to Chicago with you. And then she was like, and we're taking your older brother too. And I was like, oh, I just want to go by myself.
Right.
And then,
so you have one older brother?
I have one biological brother, and then I have an adopted brother, and then I have a half brother. But like, I don't know my adopted brother or half brother, because my adopted brother actually ran away before, like he ran away when I was like 2, and he's like been in and out of prison and stuff. And then my half brother, I've never ever met him, because my dad actually left him and his mom when he was like a baby. So it's like, and he's probably in his 50s now actually.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that weird? Like I have a 50-year-old brother somewhere that I've never met.
Do you have any desire to reach out to that guy?
I tried once or twice, like especially when like MySpace came out. I was like, maybe he's on MySpace. And I like sent like messages to anybody with because he's the third, like he's the junior of my dad, but my dad was also the junior of his dad. So he's the third. So it was like anybody with that name I was looking up and sending messages to, but I was like, I don't really give a shit. Like it won't affect my life either way. So
yeah, you're just so far removed from it, he might as well. Even though he's technically like, I don't know if he's blood but he's technically family. He might as well just be a stranger.
Even if I did find him, it's like, oh, you're just a stranger. Like I don't know anything.
Yeah, I'm sort of like that too. Like I have much like closer like friendships with like people I'm not related to, and then there's like literally, like I have like step siblings that I've never met.
Oh, really?
That my girlfriend's now saying, well, you should try to make an effort to meet them, and then like it's
But why?
hard. I'm not wired for that, dude. Like I don't know if it's because I was an only child and I was just mostly in my imagination for the longest time. Yeah. I don't know what it is, but I'm not necessarily, or maybe it was watching my parents get divorced, like, or probably around the same age that yours did too. I don't have that itch for like family togetherness.
Yeah. Like I'm close to my mom. Like I don't want anybody to think I'm talking shit about my mom. Like throughout this, like I'm very close to my mom. And like my brother and I had a rocky relationship for a bit, but like we're pretty close. Like I think he's a good man now. But
you were like, I don't want you coming to Chicago.
No, not at all. No, I wanted to go by myself. I wanted to trek through the wilderness of career.
Did you eventually get there?
We ended up packing up. My mom ended up. I canceled with the dude I was going to rent the room from because we needed like a place from like my whole family. So my mom ended up finding like this place, which later on turned out to be like a horrible area, like a drug infested area. And it was like a basement. It was a garden apartment, which is in the basement. And like, they told us it was going to be like, 1,000 square feet. Turned out to be like 500 square feet for like 3 people to live in. And like they were like, yeah, it's a 3-bedroom apartment. But like one of them was like a closet. Like literally there were brooms in it.
Right. This apartment they call a 3-bedroom. Oh, yeah. It's like 1, 2, 3. And then as you can see, we're in the living room. It's not that.
Yeah, so we got there and it was
Get creative with real estate listing. Okay, so
yeah, we were like, yeah, there's no way we can even put beds in here, let alone all the furniture we brought from Florida. And then they were like, well, we're gonna sue you if you don't take it, and we were like, just break the lease. And so we ended up living like we were like, we don't give a shit, take whatever down payment we gave you, which was like all the money I had saved up to move to Chicago and stuff. And then after like 3 days of like living in this U-Haul truck, we were like, just go back to Florida. So we ended up moving back to Florida. Like I lost my deposit on the second city and like everything like that.
Oh jeez.
And when I got back to Florida, like I ended up like had to ask for my old job back, and I ended up working like 80 hours a week at this job.
What job was that?
It was this place called Duffy's Sports Grill.
Okay.
So I would work 40 hours like as a cook, like as a line cook, and then once that shift was over, I would change into like a waiter's outfit, so I could do another 40 hours as a waiter.
Oh my god.
Because they were helping me out because I needed like lots of money, so they were like, all right, we'll do the waiter thing because that'll give you cash, and do the chef thing and that'll give you on the back end. And so like that's how I was able to like recoup my life.
Wow. So like you were working
I was
like 12.
18.
You were 18, and like how long are you working, like 12-hour days?
It was yeah, basically. I would get there to open, and then I would be there until it closed, which is a sports bar, so it was like 3 a.m.
Like 3 a.m.
And then I'd be there at 6 a.m. to like get all the orders in and all that stuff.
Yeah, and what's your clientele like? A lot of like college football fans and
yeah, I mean it was like
burnouts.
Jack Nicklaus, the golfer, was like lived around the corner, so like he was there all the time, and like it was a place called PGA Boulevard, which is where it was, so it's Pro Golfer Association Boulevard, so all these like rich people would come in there, and it was like that kind of rich people pretending they're good old boys.
I see.
You know what I mean?
It's like, I have a trust fund, but I'm wearing camo.
Yeah. And so I got to the point after...
I don't really talk like this.
That's ridiculous. Yeah, so like after like doing like 80-hour weeks for like at a good month or two, like I started like having like nervous breakdown mode.
Yeah,
where it was like,
that will definitely get you there.
Where it wasn't like... I wasn't having thoughts of like, oh, I should commit suicide, but there were thoughts of like, if I did commit suicide, how would I do it?
Yeah, you start like kind of...
Yeah, like you were... Not that I would actually do it, but like
death.
That weird morbid fantasy of like...
So you got like to a really... Just through lack of sleep and lack of...
Yeah, so when we moved back to Florida, I literally had $1,000 in my savings account. So it was like, how do I get an apartment with just $1,000? We found like... This one apartment was like a 2-bedroom apartment, so like we moved in there and like all of our boxes were just filling everything up. So like when I wasn't working, I couldn't really sleep, so I would just unpack the boxes at night in between shifts. So like one day I was unpacking the boxes and I found my notebook from that stand-up comedy class, And I was remembering like how great it felt to be on stage.
Right.
I was like, oh man, that's the last good memory I have was like crushing it at this comedy club. And so then I called up, and it was a bringer show to perform at the Palm Beach Improv, 10 people. And so I was like, I'd like to do open mic night. And then they were like, bring 10 people. And so I asked all the people at the restaurant, please come. And I asked all my old high school friends to come. And so I think the first night I was there, I had like 70 some odd people came for me.
Wow.
Yeah. And like,
I remember those days too.
Oh, when you could bring people to shows?
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
Oh, it was great. And like to the paid shows?
Oh, no. Yeah, so like 70 people came that first night, and it was literally like I was attacking the stage with a vengeance.
Because you were just like, this is what I need.
Oh, it was cathartic.
That's like your next hit.
Yeah,
almost.
yeah, exactly. And it was like I destroyed it. And that's weird. Like without ego, I can say like.
I know exactly the set you're talking about. Like everyone there loves you, so it's like you got a built-in fan base because you got friends. And then you're going up there and people are excited.
People were rooting for me, and then they saw that I actually was good, and that got them even more excited. So it was like uproarious laughter, and like people were giving me standing ovations at the end on my second time on stage. And obviously, most of it was probably manufactured from friendship.
Sure.
But it was like I got off stage, and I was like, I put in my 2 weeks. And so I ended up putting my 2 weeks for like the waiter job. So then I was just working in the kitchen.
Working in the kitchen.
Because the waiter job was at night. So I was like, I'll work the kitchen during the day. And I found out every open mic I could go to. And it was just like, let's do it. Let's hit it hard. I was in Florida. I was doing like.
And this is when the thoughts of killing yourself go away. And you're like, what's my next mic? What's my next
Yeah,
show?
it was stop being inventive about killing yourself and start being inventive about how to do comedy. Like it was like all the energy, all the depression I had went straight into let's make this work. And so Fantastic. I did it in like Florida. I was doing like 5 mics a night, which is ridiculous.
And working as a line cook, which is a physical job.
Yeah. So I would work from like 6 a.m. till 6 p.m. basically. And then from there, I would just run to do as many mics as I could. And we would get done at like, once again, 3 a.m. And then it would be like, all right, I guess I'm just going to go back to work now.
Yeah. Oh, there's a sort of bit of that rock and roll lifestyle that like Anthony Bourdain kind of romanticizes in his books about being just in the restaurant back of house industry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was like, where it's just like you're covered in chicken grease and the sweat and the fumes and the heat, and it's like when you walk dogs in the cold, you're like, oh, this is miserable, but in the heat, you're like, fuck it, I know. There's that energy that pumps through, like Mad Max style. No,
yeah, definitely. That's because I always envied the back of the house restaurant jobs because I think maybe coming from my sort of like I had a little bit more of an ability to kind of navel gaze on like going to I went to school for theater. It's like, oh, I don't want to end up as a waiter and like like there's all those all of the servers are just like, oh, I want to be doing something else, but the cooks seem to be having more fun.
Yeah, the cooks are the best.
Yeah.
I learned for a while I couldn't speak Spanish, but I could understand Spanish, and I could also understand Creole. The only words I can speak in either language were curse words, classic.
Right.
But it was like, I could understand Creole and Spanish for a while, but we always had the most fun.
Yeah.
It was disgusting, laborious work, but it was great.
I like that. I like that about that sort of that industry, the camaraderie of pirates.
Yeah.
Almost. I think comedians are kind of the same way. Yeah. That's why.
You know what it is? I think it's like when you're a waiter, like you're by yourself and you're working your tables. But like when you're in the kitchen, you're a team, because it's like you got the expediters calling out like, drop the steak, drop the shrimp. I need a salad in 2 minutes. I need this. Get that brownie sundae ready, blah, blah, blah. So everybody's working as a team to make sure that one ticket has all the items together by the time it needs to go out. So there was that team camaraderie, like you said, whereas being a waiter, you're like, plug things into the computer and I'm done.
Right. And then kind of have to put on a show for whoever's there.
Yeah.
See if you can get their money.
So like back of the house is like improv teams and the front of the house is like stand-up comedy.
Exactly. What kind of places in Florida were you hitting where you could hit 5 to 6 a week?
When I started out, it was mostly open mics. Eventually, I started working the road for like 2 years, and then...
Do you know Eric Myers?
Yeah!
I love him.
It's his birthday today.
Is it?
It is.
Oh, I gotta wish him a happy birthday.
Yeah, man.
He's like one of the best, I think. Like as far as just like a crushing like club comic, I think he's second to none. Like he was the first time when I first started doing comedy, I had met him when he was living in Virginia.
Oh yeah, because he's in Baltimore.
Yeah, and he would roll with this guy named Jim Pate because
Jim, I think I've met him once or twice.
Yeah, and Eric, I was just like, I couldn't breathe. I was just laughing so hard.
That's the best. You can't breathe when you're listening to Eric Myers.
Because he just keeps going. He's just like, bah, 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 and he's manic, and there's good jokes like his.
Yeah.
I got my
jammies out.
Yeah, and he's got that great voice, and I'm crediting you now because I love this joke, Eric. He talks about how he has a felony, he can't vote, and he talks about like felons who's like, yeah, I killed 3 people, but my main concern is healthcare. It's just such a great joke. So how did you get into doing the road early?
It was out of necessity. Like I was doing the mics and everything like that for a couple of years, and then like the goal was to become an MC at the Improv. Like was always the goal because that was the only paying gig in Florida.
Right.
Was that, or you work the road, but like working the road, like for me came out of like I didn't really send out too many press kits, which is like back in the day you had to send like a DVD and your headshot and a manila envelope to places. Right. Like now you just send an email or send them to your YouTube page or whatever.
Sure.
But like, so it was like laborious, costly work to like, you had to spend money to make money. So a lot of my stuff came out of like references where it was like, hey, so-and-so heard you good, come up to here, go to there. And so like it was a lot of, but it was like in Florida, there was a lot of like one-nighters where there weren't like comedy clubs where you did the whole weekend. So it was like,
yeah, so there's places where you could get like maybe $70 or $100 for...
No, not even. Like I would go to places that were like $50 for the show. Okay. And then it was like 7 hours away. So like you basically just spent that in gas. Right. And they were like, yeah, we don't provide hotel, but we do have but it was funny because like a lot of these places were in hotels. Like they were in like the cafeteria of the hotel, like where they served breakfast. And Belgian, like there was a Belgian waffle maker next to the stage, and they were like, "Yeah, we don't provide hotels." Like you are a hotel, and they were like, "Well, we do have a comic rate of $30 a night," and it's like, "I'm gonna pay $30."
You're paying me $50.
You're paying $50, and so it was a lot of like learning how to sleep like in your car. Like the best places are Walmart parking lot. That is like the number one place because there's lighting, it's pretty safe, and there's a lot of truckers are allowed to park there and sleep. Right. So like nobody really bothers you.
So you were sleeping in your car. Like what kind of car did you have?
I had 2 cars that I used. One was a 1990 Nissan Pathfinder, which was you could put the back down and sleep in the back. And
so you're trying to hide also so people can't see that you're asleep.
Yeah, like, and the other one I had was a 1990 Oldsmobile Cutlass Cruiser station wagon, which once again I got it because you could sleep in the back.
Yeah, perfect.
And so you could hide it. Like what was great is if you had a whole weekend of work, or if you had like you linked a bunch of one-nighters together that were in the same vicinity, an hour drive apart. I would buy like a hotel room for one night that was kind of located in the middle of all the places, and they would give you a pass that you would like a parking pass you put in the windshield of your car. So I would get one night, sleep in the hotel, but then the rest of the nights I would just leave the parking pass in the thing and sleep like hide under blankets. And then in the morning, instead of taking a shower, like you jump in the pool, let the chlorine disinfect you. And it's like
been there.
Yeah. Or if you're close to a beach, like a lot of beaches have like outdoor showers, so you could just go to the shower and just scrub up, and you were done. So it was like there were ways to live on the road, but it was like after a while, I was like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, you're just sort of like I'm sort of done with this.
Especially since like a lot of like. You don't make any money on the road unless you're like selling merch, and I've never been that dude where I'm like, I'm gonna sell bottle openers and keychains and bumper stickers and T-shirts and shit.
Right, you're not the guy who's gonna wear his T-shirt of his joke or bring stuff on stage and because I remember, and I guess it's more common than I thought, but I always thought it was kind of tacky when the headliner like brought their merch up on stage with them, and I understand. A lot more people do it than. I originally thought, so I guess it's just part of what you do.
My thing is like I didn't mind if somebody sold merch because obviously I understand like that's how you you. I have so many friends who were like swear by merch where they're like, I make more money on merch than I do getting paid. Like I know friends who sell $1,000 in T-shirts and most of it's all cash, so they just pocket it. But like at the same time, it's like, don't pitch on stage though. Just let it be out in the lobby and let people see that you have T-shirts in the lobby. Don't, because I'll see like people. I'm not gonna mention name. Is a very big comedian, and she goes on stage and she literally does 20 minutes on her merch. And like obviously she does it in a humorous way that people laugh at it, but it's like,
yeah.
Are you a comic or a sale? You're a QVC person now. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, that's kind of how it always felt too. And I guess they have more business savvy than maybe you or I do. But I would feel weird doing that.
Yeah, I was working when I started work as a house MC at the Improvs. I was working with Kirk Fox. Do you know Kirk Fox?
I know Kirk.
He's a very weird headliner. But I go, hey, so do you have any merch you're gonna sell after the show? And he goes, nah. And I was like, do you have any merch? And he goes, yeah. And I was like, but you don't sell it after the show? He goes, if they want a T-shirt, they can go to my website. And I was like, all right, I respect that. Like, make them want your shirt, I guess.
Yeah, because I think if people like you enough, they'll go the extra steps. I thought, and I know this is boring business stuff, but if you have merch that makes sense for you, like if I eventually get to a point where I can monetize any of like my stand-up or this, I thought a cool merch thing to do, because I love soccer, would be to get like soccer scarves, like get a logo with like a cool crest or something.
Yeah,
like stuff that kind of makes sense. But I think sometimes if it's like kind of cheesy or gimmicky, then I think it wouldn't be worth it to me.
Yeah, I know a lot of features especially that like would work the road, and like they have one bit where their punchline is like, "Are you a cocksucker?" And like that's what's on their shirt.
That's the
and
T-shirt.
It's like, don't. And then you're anchored to that bit forever now.
Yeah.
As long as you want to sell that shirt, you're anchored to that joke.
Yeah, and then also because I think some headliners seem to not like it if the feature sells. I've heard that.
I would say most are cool with it just because they're like, I've been there and I understand. But it's also like, yeah, it's not a flea market outside. Let's not turn the lobby of a comedy club into a flea market. Yeah, I knew this dude Pat Melton was the feature for this week. I'm not gonna say who a headliner is, but like he was actually outselling the headliner as far as merch, because his DVD was $10 and he was blowing the headliner out of the water. Like he was just way funnier than the headliner. So the headliner kept getting angry, and every single show he'd be like, "How many DVDs do you sell?" And he'd be like, "I sold 20," and the headliner was like, "I only sold 5." And like every single show, he was like, "How did you sell?" And and so every show he made him move his table further and further away. Not that he was like, "Don't sell." He was like, "Just go outside."
All right.
You can't be in the comedy club selling.
Yeah, you can go in the parking lot.
And he was still out selling them. It was great.
Well, I guess he could work on his act as opposed to like where he's going to tell the features. So.
I was out there one time and somebody went up to the headliner and was like, "Oh, hey, do you know where the feature is? I want to get one of his DVDs." And like meanwhile, all of the headliners' DVDs are all splayed out. I was like, "Oh, that's gotta fucking hurt."
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. That's an aspect of the game I haven't had to experience all that much yet.
Oh, really?
The selling thing, because I don't have anything to sell yet.
I don't like. That's why I stopped working the road, because it was like I'm not making any money doing this.
Right.
Like,
so you made a conscious decision to get off the road. Is that when you moved to New York?
No, actually, I stopped working the road when I got offered to be the house MC at the South Florida, because they had 3 improvs in South Florida. They had West Palm, Miami, and Fort Lauderdale, which are about like 45 minutes. Like from West Palm to Fort Lauderdale is about 45 minutes, and from Fort Lauderdale, Miami is about 45 minutes. So it's all drivable, and I would get paid the same pay as if I was working the road, but I wasn't driving as much, and I could go home every night. And so I did that for like 4 years. And it was like one of those things where I started getting into like all my writing started to be so I could be a better MC and not a better comic.
Right.
Where I was writing jokes so that I knew the audience would like these jokes instead of like, oh, these are jokes I like. It was like, oh, I know the married people will love this joke. And
Exactly.
The
You
people
start
from
writing.
Port St. Lucie will love this joke.
Yeah, you start writing for what the crowd wants, and
Yeah.
you start writing for what's going to kill.
I think a lot of comics do that, whether it's I'm writing jokes so that the audience will like me, or I'm writing jokes that other comics will like me.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized, like, along the way, like, especially even this past year in New York, it's like, it's neither of those things. It's write jokes that you think are funny, but then there's the caveat that you have to find some way to make the audience understand why that's funny.
Right.
Where it's like, don't pander to the audience, like, and don't talk down to them. Like, bring them up to your level.
Mm-hmm. I think there are a lot of comics that I think miss the don't talk down to them.
Yeah.
And maybe that's from watching like my Facebook news feed erupt every other day. But I think because I think that's also like people. And I was talking about this with someone the other day on the show. Like comics like Patrice O'Neill or Bill Burr.
Oh, Jesus, yeah.
Like guys like that are amazing and are a lot of people are influenced by, but they miss the part that makes them not an asshole completely.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it just comes off as condescending or rude.
You know who's, I think, probably the penultimate comedian that I don't think people are starting to forget about him, which pisses me off, but I think that one of the greatest comedians of all time is Greg Giraldo.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically for the reason that he was, like, blunt and, like, these are my opinions, like Bill Burr, Patrice O'Neill, or any of those dudes. And he was of such a high intellect, but anybody could understand him. Like, whether you were the dumbest piece of shit, you still got his jokes.
Right.
But he was making you come to his level. He wasn't coming down to you.
Yeah, which is, I think, that's the best way to be like maintain your voice, I think.
Yeah.
And avoid the cliches of being like a tired old road hack.
Yeah. That's the thing too. Is like that's one of the reasons why I wanted to leave Florida like 8 years before I came to New York.
Mm-hmm. How long have you been in New York?
It's about a year.
Okay, so you're relatively new to see, because I know that I'd only started seeing you relatively recently, but I felt like you'd always been around.
Yeah. It's weird because like I've been doing a lot of like Brooklyn mics, then I was like, oh no, I've been neglecting all the Queens mics, and then it's like I barely go to all the Manhattan mics. Mm-hmm. And then like when I did that Caroline's audition a couple months ago, like everybody was in line, and I was like, I know 10 of these people, mm-hmm. but there's 200 people here.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I started seeing you at a lot, and I think where we kind of started connecting over material at least, was at Jake Hart's mic.
Oh, the dump. Yeah.
Doing long form storytelling stuff.
It's funny. I actually started doing that because I didn't do a lot of stories, because like mm-hmm. before I came here, it was pretty much all I did were like
set up punch.
Yeah, it was all like there was all the MC stuff where it was like, yeah, I got to get you guys warmed up as quick as possible. I can't take my time with these jokes, otherwise mm-hmm. you guys are gonna teeter off. Like it was all about getting the energy up. So like the storytelling mics were great because it was like, yeah, you don't need a punchline every 3 seconds.
Exactly, and the people there, they know what they're there for, and so they're a little more attentive than than maybe a typical stand-up comedy club audience.
Yeah.
Of which I'm trying to do more of, because I feel like I still have that weird pull. Like I think some of our peers are willing and able to forego comedy clubs entirely and still get really great sets and do really great stuff.
Yeah.
I still have that thing, and I don't know if you have this too at the back of my head, that if I'm not in at comedy clubs, I'm not really a comedian. I have to succeed with the Bridge and Tunnel people. I have to get them to like me.
Well, you know what's funny is like when I first came up here, I was like, all right, here's the plan. I'm gonna set foot in New York, and then I'm just gonna go to every comedy club. I'm gonna get into every comedy club within the first few months. And then when I got up here and I did a few mics, I realized like how disconnected I was from my material, and I was mm-hmm. like, I don't want these comedy clubs in New York to see me do jokes like this. And
right.
I was like, I need to rethink everything. So literally, I have not done a comedy club in New York, like no open mic. Mm-hmm. I haven't done the Stand. I haven't done any of I did Eastville. I never did their open mic, but my buddy was the MC. And I was hanging out one night, and one of the comics didn't show up, so they threw me up. Uh-huh. And I've done that like once or twice. But like other than that, I've not performed at any comedy clubs simply for the reason that I didn't want them to see me do comedy before I thought it was good.
Yeah.
Because like when I got here, I threw out all my old material like the first week, and I was like, the star from like that comedian. You ever see the documentary?
Oh, I love that documentary.
And I was like, oh, I got to do that. I got to start from scratch. So basically, none of the jokes I do now I did in Florida, and some of them like I took the premises of the jokes from Florida, and I'm like redoing them to do my new voice. Because it's like I think it's now more who I am as a person on stage and off stage. They're syncing up a little more than like kind of what we were talking about. I don't know if it was on the recording, but like that morning radio DJ. Hey guys, fill out your comment cards and blah blah blah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Next week we're gonna have
do we have the bachelor parties here? Any bachelorette parties? Like,
don't forget to fill out
don't forget to get the drink of the day. It's the Biodome in honor of our headliner, Pauly Shore.
Oh, I missed that about clubs and the themed drinks. My dream would be to get it the one intended consequence of fame I want is that I could get a drink named after me at the Creek or at someplace like that.
Oh yeah, they do that. Yeah. There's the Patton. There's a couple
the Patton,
the Mark Norman.
The Gambino. The Nick Turner is my favorite.
What is that one?
That's orange soda and like vanilla vodka or whipped cream vodka.
Oh, I gotta try that. It's like a creamsicle.
Yeah, it's like a creamsicle.
Oh, I gotta try that. What comedy club did you start at? Because you were from Maryland, right?
Yeah, I started outside of Baltimore. The first like true comedy club I did, because I started at a booked open mic that had a paid headlining spot.
Oh, nice.
Called Drink to We're Funny, and it was originally in the bar of a Damon's Bar and Grill. It's now at a place in Timonium called High Tops.
Oh, nice.
And they set up the room, and it's better now because they'll like turn off the TVs, and on days when the Ravens are playing, we'll just not do the show. Because you're in the middle of a punchline and the Ravens score a touchdown, you're like, ah.
That's such like if somebody's listening to this and they're not a comic, they're gonna be like, yeah, that makes sense. They turn off the TV. But like a comic is like, fucking, they never turn off the TVs,
They never
man.
turn off the TVs.
How many times have I performed while the TV's going on, or somebody doesn't know how to shut off the jukebox or whatever it is?
Right.
It's like, oh god.
Yeah.
That's so funny, man.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this and you think of course you turn off the TVs, you should start running a show.
Well, it's just obvious you would turn off the TV.
Yeah. But the first like true comedy club I ever did was Magooby's Joke House.
I've always wanted to do Magooby's simply for the fact that it's called Magooby's.
Yeah. Oh, it's a great name for a club, and I would say it's like one of the best rooms in the area.
Oh, really?
Because when I started, it was at 9306 Harford Road, and there's a different club there now called Sully's Comedy Cellar, and typical low ceilings. Like I'd hit my head on the ceiling getting on stage. I think it seats like maybe 150 people or so, but Magooby's now it's in like it's in the old Timonium dinner theater, and there's raked seating, seats like 300 people, and that's where like Joe Matarese goes, and I think Carlos Mencia has been there a couple of times.
That's one thing that like spoiled me a lot. A lot of comics in Florida like don't realize this about the rest of the country, because like the clubs in Florida are dinner theaters basically. The Palm Beach Improv holds 600 people. So like I was regularly performing to 600 people per show.
Yeah.
And 7 shows a week. That's how many people you performed in front of. And like the people who owned it as a partnership, they own the Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, and they also own Tempe Improv and Stand Up Live in Phoenix. Okay. And those are all their idea is like, we want the classiest comedy clubs. So like that whole idea of like, the Comedy Cellar or the Stand where it's so tiny, I'm like, what? These should be the bars outside of the comedy club. Like these, like the Tampa Improv is like, it's 3-tiered, where it's like, it's an old vaudeville theater where it's literally like the stage, there's like 200, 300 feet above you. That's the ceiling.
Yeah.
And like there's 3 tiers. You have to take an elevator to get up to the third one. The green room's on the 3rd floor. And it's this beautiful theater. And the bar outside is probably the size of the entire stand. And it's like, oh yeah, we're spoiled. And then you perform with like all these A-list celebrities, and every single time you perform, it's like, oh Jesus, this isn't real comedy. Sometimes you think to yourself,
yeah, it's nice. You start ending up like Rocky and Rocky 3. Get like, need to go back to the gym. Who are some of did you have any memorable comics that you opened for?
There were so many. Because I did it for like 4 years, almost every single weekend. where it's to the point where I'll forget that I work with a comedian. Where one time we were talking about Harlan Williams, and I was like, always want to see Harlan Williams live. And somebody was like, I saw you open for Harlan Williams. And I was like, fuck, I forgot I opened for Harlan Williams. Like, there was a period, because, like, especially towards the last year I was in Florida, like, I was so, like, bitter and jaded. I never smiled. I never laughed in, like, real life.
You're just not enjoying it.
Yeah, and so, like, there were blackout periods, apparently, where I just don't remember working weekends.
Wow.
Where it was literally like I was, like, clocking in, clocking out. Because it was that thing where it was, like, when you're an MC, especially at those ones, since they're so fancy, you have to do well every time because they're all A-list clubs.
Yeah.
So it's like if you MC at an A-list club, you should be able to feature at a B-list club. Oh, no, yeah.
If you can feature at an A-list club, you should be able to headline a B club.
Exactly. So it was like you had to do well every single time. So you couldn't experiment with any jokes. And because that was like I was working almost 7 days a week at the comedy club, it was like I could never do new jokes.
Right. You just have to do what's going to work.
And it was always I had to warm up the crowd and blah blah blah. So there was I was creatively dying. So I started hating stand-up comedy, even though I still loved it somehow.
Yeah.
So I was like, fuck it. And it was just I got so in my head about it. I was like, it was like, I need to leave here where I'm a paid comedian to become an open micer again. Like, I need to hit the reset button.
Absolutely. And I think you're doing that. I know we haven't known each other for super long, but we're doing Grant Lindahl's weekly stand-up project.
Which is great because it's like 10 minutes, and like most mics or shows here don't give you a full 10 minutes.
Exactly. It's like 5 to 8. Yeah. And I think that the stories stuff you're doing is fantastic.
Thanks, man.
So, and then I guess we'll do this and then we'll get out real quick. What do you see? What's like the next step you want to take? What's the next thing you want to improve on as far as either personally or comedically?
That's one of the things that, like, I'm coming to terms with is like, as weird as it sounds, even though I'm not getting paid to do comedy anymore, it's like, this is like the happiest I've been doing comedy, is being able to like just create new jokes, experiment, try out stuff. So there is that part of me that like there's an expectation of comedy that you need to move to the next level. So I'm like, well, maybe I'll get like a tape and I'll go to festivals, or maybe I can even start working the road again. But like for right now, I'm like very content with like just doing comedy without the worry about having to be good, or worry about the business side of it, or buying, selling merch, or sending out press kits, or entry fees to festivals or whatever. So now I'm like, I don't know. I might want to try to do like sketches and stuff online or something.
Okay. Yeah.
Just because that seems like you have to do that nowadays.
That does seem to be a lot of what happens. That and writing articles.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know if I even want to, like, it's that Mitch Hedberg joke, which I love, which is, when you do stand-up, I got into stand-up comedy. I moved to LA, and they're like, oh, you do stand-up? Can you write us a script? It's like, you work your whole life to be a world-class chef, and they're like, oh, you're a chef? Can you farm? And I was like, no, I just want to do stand-up, but like, that's not acceptable now. It's not acceptable just to want to do stand-up. So it's like,
that's like, it can be the core thing that you want to do, but then there's all this other stuff.
Yeah. So
there are all these other platforms, as they would say, to facilitate the stand-up.
So maybe it's not even that I want to do anything. I need more motivation to put myself out there. Maybe that's my next step, is like trying to like, it's almost like I got divorced and I'm like, I gotta put myself back in the dating scene, guys.
Right.
I gotta leave myself open. I gotta get on OkCupid, or apply to Limefest, Comedy Creek, or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Comedy Fest. Yeah.
Yeah. Just like little. I found, and I don't know if this is anything you take away from, like, because I've been working on a one-man show. I'm not a headliner. No comedy club has made me a headliner. Yeah. But I just had all these stories that had a bunch of laughs in them, and I was like, okay, maybe I can just start emailing bars that have microphones, and I'll see what I can do. And I'm not making money yet, but I'm building something that I want to then try to take on the road, and having something that I feel like really excited and jazzed about.
Yeah.
makes all of the other BS boring email sending work.
Yeah, that's a good point.
At least not suck as much.
You gotta make the juice worth the squeeze. You gotta put the squeeze in to make the juice.
Yeah.
I guess. Well, that's interesting you're doing that because, like, that's actually gaining a lot of popularity nowadays, especially with, like, Titus does that.
Titus,
Mike Birbiglia.
I love
Kelly
him.
Carlin. Like, all these, like, people are, like, doing, like, live one-man shows, basically.
Yeah, and they're joke dense, so it's not like performance art, and it's not like a theatrical one-man show where it's just like people wearing all black and then just like words and colors. Although I do like that stuff too sometimes, but I like the joke dense because for me, like, I have to go a long time in between listening to Mitch Hedberg albums to enjoy the jokes again because I'm familiar with them. But like the long form story stuff, as I can because you just get into it and then you sort of like have like an emotional connection to it. The shows almost become like your favorite bands. In a way.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah. So maybe that's going to be the thing you do, because I know you've got good long form stories. I love that, like the Gallagher story and
thanks, man,
and stuff like that. And is that online anywhere?
No, because I don't know if I want to put it out in its form yet.
Mm-hmm.
I want to online. I barely have any YouTube videos.
Sure.
Because I don't want people to be like, oh, that's what. One time, true story. I was Jim Norton was coming to the Improv, and I was like, oh, I'd love to MC for Jim Norton. And they were like, great, we'll put you on. And then they were like, oh, no, his people want like a tape of yours to approve you. I was like, yeah, that's no problem. Let me get you a tape. And then like 5 minutes later, they were like, yeah, they found an old video of you online. And I was like, no.
Oh, no.
Because it was like the first 6 months I did comedy. I had a backwards baseball cap. And they were like, yeah, they said you curse too much. And I was like, fuck, God damn it. So it was like, ever since then, it was like, oh, I want to take every video off I can until I'm ready to like put my shit on there. There's like Comedy Time has a few of mine, but it's like I can't get those down because Comedy Time TV's
right. They kind of own that. Yeah, there's at least one of my old stand-up sets. I unlist most of them, but I kept like one of my early sets on just for nostalgic value. But I date all of my. Oh, you do? Yeah, the descriptions all have the date in them. So
people know, like, oh, he's probably changed since then.
Yeah, and then I have the oldest one, and then I have like the one that I use, that I'm using right now.
I'm gonna do that, except it's gonna be like, this is when I was skinny.
I hear you, man.
This is before I was pre-diabetic.
Right on, man. So, dude, this has been great. I appreciate you.
Yeah, this was fun, man.
I appreciate you taking the time. And then when you're ready to put that Gallagher story out, and just a quick tease, you'll want to hear it, so follow Will Watkins on social media
at William A. Watkins.
So when you're ready to put that out, you'll let me know, and then I can link it.
Yeah, man.
It doesn't even have to be your episode. It could be just somebody else's.
I gotcha.
Thanks for talking to me, Will.
Yeah, thanks, Will Carey.
What an interesting guy Will Watkins is. I really enjoyed that conversation. I hope you did too. Check the description for links to Will's Twitter account. And if you want to, again, check out the 8 Comedy Project, you can search for it on Facebook at The 8 Comedy Show. And as always, you can check my website, willcareyisfunny.com. That is Carey isfunny.com for links to my YouTube channel, Facebook, Twitter. Follow me on all those. And of course, feel free to subscribe and rate Between Awesome and Disaster on iTunes, because it really helps me out. I appreciate you guys being here. We're going to have another episode on Thursday. And I will see you not next week, I will see you Thursday, Between Awesome and Disaster. Take care.